Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Peter Harrison and I'm an Electron Microscopy Scientist at eBIC at Diamond Light Source. And today we're going to go through plunge freezing some HexAuFoil grids using the Vitrobot. So we're going to start by transferring the grids from the supplied grid box onto a surface from which we can do the glow discharging. So I like to use these little metal blocks which are available, but you can also use parafilm wrapped around a cover slip on a microscope slide. That's totally fine. And a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about today are applicable for not just using HexAuFoil grids, but using any other grid type. So the first thing you need to know is the orientation of the grid, because one side will have the film and the other won't. With these grids, it tells you on the grid box that the top sides face the center of the grid box, so it's easy to know. But if you do drop your grids, then you can tell by looking at them. So with these HexAuFoil grids, you can tell, if you tilt the grid against the light, you can see a rainbow color, and that's the side which has the film on. It's a lot easier if you're working with carbon grids to tell which side is which, because one side is very dull. And on the foil or top side of the grid, there are distinguishing features which you can use to identify that side and reorientate yourself on the grid. And the only other thing you need to remember is that these grids are pretty robust, so it doesn't matter if you glow discharge them for longer, you won't destroy the gold film on top of the grid. So don't worry about doing 2 or 3 minutes glow discharging if you really need. The one other thing I want to mention is I don't clean these grids before I use them. I use them out of the box, so there are no problems doing that. You don't need to clean them first. So this is your standard Vitrobot. I have it set to 4 degrees on the temperature and 100% on the humidity. The other options you need to change are in the options tab. So some of this is set up for my personal preferences. You will have your Vitrobot set up how you like to use it and handle it. So for example, I have skip grid transfer ticked on because that's how I like to prepare my grids. But the two important settings here are the blot time and the blot force, and these are different on HexAuFoil grids than you would use for your standard carbon or gold grids. So I have the blot time set to 5 seconds and I have the blot force set to 10 seconds. I would suggest that you may need to do a little bit of screening around this dependent on your protein, especially if you're working on membrane proteins. You may need to adjust these factors slightly. So yeah, every protein is different. As always, make sure blot total is 1. If you have a foot pedestal, you can use the foot pedestal. I don't have one installed here at the moment. So we have the settings ready to go. I always recommend going through dry with your settings at least once before applying a grid and applying protein to check that everything works as it should. Okay, so that all worked fine. So I'm going to get my Vitrobot tweezers. So I try and pick up the grids as close to the edge as I can, but I find it's better to make sure you at least get hold of the grid rather than, getting it so close to the edge it falls off. The grids, I find these grids are relatively robust. Don't bash them against the side of your container, but in my hands, I've found they're reasonably stable. So I always give it a little twist to make sure it doesn't fall off. Click place new grid, or if you've got the foot pedestal, just press it on and continue. So we're using a Vitrobot today, but you can use any other plunge freezing device. such as a GP2 or whatever you have in your home institute. So this is the hardest part of the process. For anyone who's prepared grids will know. I like to top up the plunge bowl, and this is entirely dependent on how you like to do this. So I use both hands to gently remove the tweezers using my thumb and forefinger, keeping the grid in the ethane. And then I rest the tweezers gently on the brass cup. And then because I have large hands, I can lift everything off nice and gently. So this is the hardest part. And then quickly into the nitrogen. And then gently position into the grid box. So this is mostly practice, and it does take a little while, especially with jittery hands. So that's the grid making process that I use. And as I mentioned, there are subtle differences in how different people do this. So many of my colleagues will do things slightly different, but overall the general process is the same. And I've highlighted the key differences in the process we use when we're working with HexAuFoil grids. So these grids are now ready to use, and we will use these here at eBIC for a variety of things, such as our training program and also just for commissioning on our microscopes. So I hope you've all found this informative, and thank you for watching.